Hey guys, we're here with Madeline and Jeff Novick, and we're here at their cargo bike meetup, and I just think that it's super cool. I think like they're like kind of advocates and not even in it that long. Like you got your bike not that long ago and just been like, I love this thing. I want the cargo bike revolution.
Totally.
I want more parents and like just, I guess, make this, city more livable and safer and stuff like that, because you probably start to notice that very quickly once you start riding. I'm interested just to know like what your experience has been like as a mom with your cargo bike mama on Instagram, by the way. So
right.
Make sure to follow her. But I think it's funny because recently I spoke with a mom in downtown LA, which the bike infrastructure is even less there. And she was like, we should really have like a Facebook group or something like that for like people in downtown LA, because I feel like I'm getting into this and I feel like such a like pariah or whatever, like, just and to have that like camaraderie and like, oh yeah, we're doing this and like these are the little tips and tricks that we use. So what was it like, kind of, or maybe both of you guys could say, like, what was it like getting into it in the beginning and that kind of going through that transition, I guess, on some level?
Yeah, I'd say it's actually a fairly smooth transition. I found that, the alternative is the subway or the bus. And so I had been taking maybe like 45 minutes to go, 15, 20 blocks maybe, and I had to go to the doctor's office with the kids, or I was taking my son to karate, or I was doing any number of parent-related things, and it was just taking up and eating up enormous amounts of time.
Sure.
And so we had spent the summer in the Netherlands, and we just had access to a bike with kids, and it was just amazing. It was a game changer in how we operated and how efficient we were as parents and just as people living in an urban environment. And so we came home and we were like, should we just get the bike? And we did. We pulled the trigger, we got the bike, and I've had it since September of last year, and it's been an absolute game changer. I can go to the grocery, I go to like Costco, I can get to the pediatrician in, like 15 minutes. We can come to bike meetups, and so it changed the whole nature.
It seems like it's such like an adventure too, right? Like I said follow her on Instagram, but she like posts all the time on Instagram too. So for me, I'm like living vicariously through, like, I don't have kids, as many of you guys may know, and like I'm kind of like just see that and like how special and enjoyable that seems. Like it just seems like a lot of fun. I'm sure it's challenging. But it just seems like a lot of fun too. I mean,
it's so much fun. And so really we've been able to do a lot of things that we have not been able to do, or we just weren't too intimidated because it took too long by subway. So like we've been to Dumbo, we've biked to Dumbo a couple of times. We go to the Intrepid Museum because it's right on the Greenway, and it's just a really easy.
I want this.
You want this?
This is mine.
Okay, it's yours. Go show Jackie.
Jackie.
Like a lot of really cool adventures were just inaccessible before. Like the Intrepid would take over an hour from our apartment in Harlem to get to. It takes 20 minutes by bike.
So you guys go around, you're able to get to a lot of places quicker and stuff like that. And
with the pandemic, it's been a lot safer,
right?
So like we're not on the subway anymore, and we can control our environment the best that we can in New York City.
Right.
We can control our environment and who we're coming in contact with and who's within 6 feet of us. Now the challenge, of course, is that the biking infrastructure in certain peripheral areas just isn't there. And
when you start to experience it firsthand, it really changes your perspective of the infrastructure and how important it is. And when you have a protected space to having a non-protected space, and it's just,
Well, we've tried not to let that limit us too much, right? So like I'll bike up to the Bronx Zoo, even though the Bronx has terrible infrastructure. In certain cross areas, it's just awful.
Right.
But this goes back to this idea of a revolution, is that the more people you have biking, the more demand there is to change and make it safer. A lot of moms are very scared. They're very scared to bring their kids on a bike in New York City traffic, which is actually one of the reasons why we picked the Urban Arrow, because of the infrastructure, like the structure of the bike. It's big. It's sturdy. It's meant for the urban environment, and it's huge, right? So like cars see you, which is my big thing. Also, I'm only 5 feet tall, and so the lower center of gravity makes it a lot easier for me to handle versus, say, the rear loaders or the extra cycles with the long tails. So.
Yeah. How's it been for you guys, like locking it up in security? I know that that's a big concern, and I mean, you guys you're going all over the city, so clearly you have some sort of strategy there, sure, you know, but it's been pretty okay. You feel?
It's been pretty good. A lot of people, that's like number 2 question after,
right.
You know, how do you bike this thing? Is how much does it cost? Is usually a question number 1. But overnight we chain it. And then we have 2 locks on it, the cafe lock and then the Avis lock. And then our biggest trick actually has been to do a nondescript motorcycle cover.
Yeah.
And so it basically disappears in the cityscape. And so we've never had any issues with it. When we're out doing our activities, your team was great. They actually installed a bunch of the hex locks. So we've never had any of our components stolen. And then during the day, when it's uncovered, I use the Avis lock and the cafe lock and the Avis lock, and we've never, you know, knock on wood, we've never had any issues.
I think the motorcycle cover strategy is totally the way. So you guys might have seen the other video with Caroline, and she had the load, and she did the same thing in Brooklyn. Like lock it up, motorcycle cover over it, and you don't really know. Like, I think most thieves are not really getting into it too deep in that regard, but when you are locking in those areas, like lock it a little bit, extra locks, etc. And I think that's the best you can do. I mean, the way I look at it is do that, get insurance, and then you have kind of like the extra peace of mind. So, are you riding much with her, or you guys switch it up sometimes, or?
I love riding this. It used to be, talking about security, we had hex locks, which are the little magnets, and on the seat. So Maddie's 5 feet, but I'm 6. So for me to ride this, to make it easy, we had to keep adjusting the seat up and down, which we needed a hex key and all that, and that was kind of a pain. So we actually switched it to the quick release. You can see on here is just like, you got the quick release, and then we just bought this thing for $10, which is not going to save it if somebody really wants to steal it, but
Good, how are you?
But is a deterrent,
And that's an interesting thing. That's a cool thing about a lot of the cargo bikes. They do have that flexibility usually. They're usually built like a one-size thing. Just, kind of
I just come down, flip up the seat, and then I'll pick up stuff for Maddie, like picking up like one of the things in New York, like people give away all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But the problem is, how do you get it from one place to the other? It's hard to get there and it's hard to carry it.
Right.
But now you got the ability to throw anything you want in the container here.
Yeah.
No matter how big or crazy it is, and you can go literally anywhere. It's super easy. The places that, might have been just impossible to get to, like on the west side or something where it's not even close to a subway, you can now get to super easily, and now it's like fun. I like having places to ride,
right?
And places to go, because it's such an easy experience, and you get to sort of just explore the city and have reasons to go to places that you might not normally be checking out. So.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people tell me sometimes. They're like, I would give up my car, but then I need it for like grocery shopping, or carrying larger items, and then cargo bikes really solve that. And I think that's really kind of becomes that like true car replacement, which is super exciting.
These bikes are just mind blowing, because you have all the benefits of, like, you could probably fit more stuff in here than a typical SUV or a trunk,
right? Because
you can have crazy stuff that is like weirdly shaped and really long, right?
Like when I had my biggest haul was someone was giving away a campaign chest, a 3-drawer campaign chest that was like this wide and maybe like this wide and like this high, and I was like, I'll come get it, and they're like, there's no way you can carry this on a bike, and I was like, you haven't seen my bike yet.
Yeah, that's usually.
And so
I got a bike, and
I
like,
up,
nobody can believe.
I fit the campaign chest. It was sitting up like this, but I got it home.
Yeah.
It was a 100-pound, 3 foot by 3 foot by 2 foot thing or whatever it was.
What's you guys like ideal vision of the future with like bikes and cargo bikes or that sort of thing, right? I guess it's, most people are probably pretty similar. It's like better infrastructure, more bikes on the road, more acceptance towards them, which has been happening really, right? Like particularly I've been away for New York for a year, and just what I've noticed a change, in the past year, it's crazy. And but yeah, from your side, it's like maybe from the mom's perspective, it's like more kids. And
I think having just like more families on the road and on the bike will just increase awareness, and just with cars stopping in bike lanes and people just absentmindedly stepping into bike lanes. I think if there are more kids and more families riding the streets, you begin to have a whole different mentality shift of the pedestrians and the drivers, so that we would just have a more safer and more inclusive biking city.
When Maddie rides this in uptown, you're the only one who's got an urban arrow in a 5-mile radius, basically. At any given time, you're the only person. So it's kind of like it's like a mixed thing. You're riding around like it's a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
So you get all the looks, and people stop. And if you're stopped at a stoplight or something, drivers will talk to you because they think it's impressive. It's a wild thing to see.
Sure, right.
But as you said, like when you're in the Netherlands, this is so common. It's not that interesting, and that's kind of ultimately the goal. You want this to be. That's why we have these meetups.
Yeah.
And we're trying to kind of connect and sort of show other parents.
But having more bikes and different types on the road, I think that's something that City Bike did.
Yeah.
Where it used to be, I'm sure, like as a motorist, somebody might say like, oh, I'm going to turn the corner, and they're not really concerned what might be there. It's another car potentially. But as like City Bike became so prevalent and biking became so like big in New York, then you ride around the city and you say, I never know, if you're a motorist, you never know like where another, vulnerable person might be. It's a lot more likely that a cyclist, that sort of thing. And I think changes the perspective of what that might be, and like a mom with kids or whatever the case may be. I think that it helps, like kind of people, they might be normally pretty aggressive towards a cyclist because there's often that scenario, but then you say, well, oh look, it's a mom just having fun with her kids, like how could you get mad at that?
And I think a lot of looks. I get a lot of engagement with both drivers, pedestrians, like pretty much anybody. And they all get really interested, and I've had drivers be very protective and like give space and like block traffic. I had a motorcycle actually do that the other day. They stopped traffic so that I could turn safely left onto our home street.
Yeah, I'd say there's no like I feel like we've never gotten any negative
I've had
attention.
one negative experience. I've had a couple of negative experiences.
Well,
where people are like, you're gonna get, like, what are you doing, driving your kids on a bike?
I figured this might be the case, so yeah. So I was gonna ask you that. So one, I'm sure to some level it kind of hurts a little bit to have that experience. It's like, gosh, come on, I'm just trying to do the best for my kids, for my community, for the environment, etc. And why are you giving me a hard time?
Exactly.
But and I'm sure you're not going to put your kids in a dangerous situation. So. And
it's really the drivers, those particular drivers that are screaming out the windows are the ones who are very like speeding by, yelling things out the window, and I'm like, those are the drivers that make it unsafe for us.
That's the great point.
And they get really angry because I take up lane, like when I don't have a safe bike lane, I take up a lane in traffic, and they get mad that I take.
Which you are legally
allowed to do, and you should do.
You're operating as a vehicle, which is you're in accordance with the law.
Exactly.
So
and
then drivers don't like that, often.
So they get angry, they speed by me, they yell something like, "You're going to get your kids killed," and I'm like, "Actually, it's drivers like you that are going to get my kids killed." So like,
the bikes don't just like fall over and then that's it. It's always a something that happens to cyclists.
And it's already improved a lot, but we still have a long way to go. But I tell you, for the last 2 years, I've spent time in California, and as much as the environmental factors are so amazing for bikes, the infrastructure and culture are actually pretty terrible for bikes. Talking to you guys, sorry if you're from California. But it's just true. Like when you compare like a lot of these other places, and it's not inherently the people's fault. It's just like how we were raised. You think about it, some of the things that, roads in California are primarily built for cars. Here, roads were primarily built for horse and carriage and bicycles, which were huge at that time, and then the automobile came around and it changed a little bit. So to kind of try and take that back, it's a different mentality, and even the way that the sprawl and everything like that. It's interesting once you dive deeper into it. Like, why is it this way, and does it need to be this way? And it's great to have people thinking differently. And
when you spend some time in the Netherlands and you see just the texture of the streets, right?
Yeah.
Many of them are brick. It's like tons and tons of brick.
Right.
So it's a texture that feels. It says this is a place for pedestrians and cyclists. This is a calm place. And there's a saying, right? As a driver, you're a guest.
Yeah.
You're a guest in this space, right? But here, I mean, like you can just see a great example of this. This is Central Park.
Right.
We're on Central Park. We're on the Central Park Loop. This is a street right here.
Yeah.
Right? It's been car free for 2 years.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
But they still have not made any changes to this, so it looks and feels like a street.
Right.
There's literally a red light, every couple of blocks, which makes no sense because there's no cars, right? And yet you still have all of the kind of infrastructure of a car. And if they can't even deal with a Central Park, which is car free for 2 years, this whole space should have been repainted and redone to say, okay, there's cyclists and there's pedestrians, and how do pedestrians cross? That's how it's designed. Then when you go into the streets, which just scream, this is a place for cars, all the space on the curb is for parking, and here's some green paint for the cyclists.
That brings up a really good point. And as much as COVID is such a terrible thing, and New York has been hit so terribly hard with that, I mean, there's been a lot of these improvement. We're taking back the city. Really, pedestrians are saying, hey, I live here and I need space to be out there and to distance, etc. And the restaurants are using that space. And for me, I'm kind of familiar with this type of thing because it's all over Europe, and we've spent a good amount of time there. And as you guys were just in, Amsterdam and that sort of thing, it's the same sort of stuff, and that's just normal. It's not, and I would suspect that we're going to keep a lot of these things. I can't imagine that somebody's going to say, okay, I want the cars back. Really, once you really get to enjoy a space that's quiet and safe, and you can just be in this amazing place and not feel like you're going to get run over, or always have to be looking out like that. It really changes things a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we have spaces that are called, so we have these open streets in New York that came up. They're barricaded, so they're not open to through traffic for cars. They're sort of hit or miss because people have to sort of maintain them, and drivers tend to ignore things. They're I say it's like drivers are like water.
Right.
Cars will just go into any space that is available to them,
especially in New York.
And in New York, and they'll park anywhere, right?
Double parking. It's technically illegal, but really,
And then you also have these open restaurant streets, which are really great because then it's very European, where they're literally seating in the middle in the street. So
and
they're
I
really
think
barricaded.
That in particular, the restaurants in the streets, it really makes way for more of this type of thing as well, because you can just pull right up to the restaurant.
Yeah.
Security is a little bit less of a concern because your bike is right there. We actually went to eat just the other night, and the bike is literally within arm's reach where you're eating there, and so security, you don't even really have to lock it. Maybe you put the frame lock in the rear and then you're good to go. But it's just such a nice feeling. It's I can actually just be here and not feel like I got to barricade myself because somebody's trying to hurt me, And I'm looking forward to that future, and it's happening, and I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. We've been doing this in New York City for about 5 years. We started about 10 years ago, and just the changes in the mentality and just the culture and everything, it's pretty exciting. But I think just getting more, not to call you average, but just average citizens out on the bike and out, doing this, that's really where the change happens. It's not. And actually, so a friend of mine, Benno, who makes the Benno bikes, he says, I'm not a cyclist. He's I actually think that cyclists are bad for the bike culture in some ways. And no offense to cyclists, but
Cyclist,
but it's just you don't need to be anybody special. You don't need to have special skills, and even to ride a bike like this, right? I mean, that's the thing. You say, like, everybody's like, how do you even do that thing? It's just crazy. But actually, you know, you're 5 foot tall and carrying your 2 kids, loading up like you just said. You loaded with that, you know, huge piece of furniture, and it's possible. That's really the bottom line.
And what I think I may have mentioned before is I went from not riding a bike ever to riding this bike. And the learning curve was minimal because it's such an easy bike to ride, and like the balancing is really quite intuitive.
Yeah.
And so now I'm really comfortable, and I've been riding for a year. You know? And so the one thing I actually wanted to mention, I'm not sure if I had a chance, was I think COVID is actually pushing more people into this cargo biking. I have a group of mom friends, and actually one of them's here over in the, I think, dead princess outfit over there. She went from normal subway riding, bus riding, to realizing in COVID it's just not safe. And so 2 of my mom friends out of 5 have all ordered electric bikes because they want to have those alternatives. And I think, you know, COVID's been horrible, but for one, it has been, I think, changing thought process and how people can get around safely, especially in cities. So,
yeah, and I guess you think about it, like the city could say, okay, more people are going to drive cars. Let's try to like figure out some way to squeeze more cars in here, like if it's at all possible. But instead, they have really actually been pretty supportive, and I think that's just partly by nature of having more cyclists out on the road. I mean, from what we've seen, the concentration is pretty dramatic, and more people getting into it. It makes a lot of sense. So.
And we saw a couple of urban arrows the other day.
I mean, I think
we've been seeing them. There's one that's actually not far from our apartment, and I wanted to leave a little love note being like, you need to contact me. You're another urban arrow owner.
Cover.
Oh yeah.
Under nondescript
and
urban
we don't know
arrow.
who owns it, and we're desperate to find out.
Yeah.
so we're like, we know you're here.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the last point that I want to just bring up, and it just kind of, you know, ties this all together. Like what you're doing today is just that sense of community and like really, you know, working together and like, you know, and bringing new and innovative ideas, because it can be overwhelming sometimes, and just.
You imagine what is somebody who rides a bike in New York, right? You the first picture that comes to mind is some like delivery guy or like you know, some young guy who's just like hustling and almost hit you, right? It's always I got almost hit by
but you never actually got hit.
And you never, you know, and God help you if they're in a car, right? But you're never imagining a mom or dad with like 2 kids on the back. You know, that's never what people are imagining as, oh, that's a cyclist in New York, that's a bike rider. And like you said, you don't really want to be defined as a cyclist. You just want to be a New Yorker who rides a bike to get around, and you should be given all the affordance of all the safety that you would expect from any mode of transit, right? And I think that's what we're trying to build. Like like we were just talking about this when you emailed. I was like, I think there's people with these bikes, right? And we're kind of creating that community, and we want to meet all those people. That's why we hit you up for all to send out the invites to everybody you sold the bikes to.
I love it, and you know, I wish that we could support it more, and we're trying to, and we're starting to and figuring it out, you know, because the reality is, for a long time, New York City, it was very difficult to have an e-bike.
And
now, you know, the law, you know, you just basically felt like you were breaking the law, which is not totally true, but it was just, you know, now we have actually like something to stand on and say, yeah, we're good, we belong here, and this is for us too. You know, I think that's a really big deal.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, you have the people who have already kind of committed and bought these bikes and are riding, and they're sort of part of it. But I think there's just a huge number of people, of parents in particular, who just need to be, who have cars and maybe like are thinking of buying cars. Like, we have lots of friends who are in there, and I think they just need to be like sort of exposed to what the day-to-day experience is with these bikes. I think that's what is missing.
Localized as well, right? Because, you know, biking in Arizona is very different than biking in New York City, and to understand and contend with those little details, like where do you put it, you know, and to understand that, and to know that, hey, other people are doing that successfully for an extended period of time. It's you know, it can work. So,
but it's overcoming that fear, right? The fear of the unknown. It's like we spent more time probably researching where we were going to park this bike than like buying our apartment.
Yeah.
You know,
I
like
mean,
we just.
It's not even a joke.
It's not even a joke.
Yeah, we spent more time, I mean, collectively anxious for months than we did even having conversations about having children and buying an apartment. You know, which is nuts. Like this, you know, I was watching YouTube videos of bikes getting stolen in New York, and I wanted to understand everything about locks and like where were we going to put it and all that. Test riding them. We came to your shop multiple times. We asked. We know all of your, you know, Lee and you know, all of them. We asked them hundreds of hours of questions, more than any, you know, than our apartment broker or anything like that, to make this purchase. And you know, and then I think ultimately we were like, this is something that we will absolutely not regret.
Yeah.
It's something that you sort of need to commit to, but once you've made that commitment, it's such an amazing experience that. And so that, like, other families and parents, like, do it now, because the longer you wait, the less kind of time you have for the, you know, the kids
to
in the
enjoy
bike. It's the whole
actually,
kid thing.
right?
And there's the experiences that you get from that.
It can take a while to order. Once you order it, it can.
Right.
It
can. Yeah.
You know, COVID makes that worse. And
Right.
but yeah, once you get it, it's just. I mean, I use it. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days a week. You know, it's just part of our routine now, and the kids love it. They sleep in it. You know, it's great. I mean, they throw up in the car and they sleep in the bike. It's like a totally different experience.
So just one more thing I just want to say, as direct, if anybody from like DOT is watching or listening or whatever, like, bike parking is so critical, you know, and I think we have some of the infrastructure pieces in play, like, you know, there's garages that really are not being used that much now. And I know that there's companies that are like innovating around this and potentially offering solutions, but the reality is we need kind of support from the government, from DOT, from the city, because the reality is, I mean, it's just, they do that for cars. They support cars in that way, and it's just crazy which cars are, you know, harmful to the city. This is helpful to the city. So just think about that, or anybody related to that potential topic, because it's such a big deal. And it's not just that, oh yes, because, you know, somebody wants to have a fancy bike. It's somebody wants to have a bike that actually works as a form of transportation, and they want to feel it's secure.
We need a lot more bike corrals, right? Because in certain parts of the city, they're already overrun by rusted out bikes that haven't been removed. And so unfortunately, I've had a lot of experiences where I didn't have anywhere to park my bike. And so.
Which just one interrupt real quick.
Yeah.
If you ever see that, you can call 311. And if you notice, and they will come and remove it.
Okay.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing to do, because particularly if it's not like nothing going on with it, you know. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do it sometimes. I'm like, hey, you know, it's also just like doesn't really feel so great to have like these things all over the place.
And you're fed, and this is a big bike, right? So like I go to a bike corral and I'll take up the one circular thing. Like I've taken it all up basically. Or like if there's a bike on one side and it's just like this narrow part of curb, I don't have anywhere to park my bike that's like super secure. So I have to like walk it down a block or look for a gate or something, and it's just it's annoying and a challenge. It shouldn't be that way. We should just have more of them. Basically.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. This is like so great, and so right now you guys are kind of just doing like a email list more or less for the
Cargo Bike meetups. Follow me on Instagram at
Cargo Bike Mama,
MOMMA. I post all of the events, and I'll collect emails and put them on our listserv, and that's really the best way to join our central mailing list and be invited to any of these. And for those who are even just interested, you know, about cargo biking or just biking in general, the parents are great. We've all had meetups where we've tried each other's bikes out, and so we all get a chance to feel which is the right bike for us. And so we had another family that picked an Urban Arrow because they test rode ours, and then we had another family that picked a different kind of bike because they liked the feel and the balance. And so not only if you have a bike or a biking parent, but even if you're interested, come out, we can answer questions. You know, the more the merrier, really.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again so much for everything, and cool.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.